folks, and welcome to The View for your match day preview for Swansea City versus Leeds United. We're back finally after the international break, the last international break between now and March, and tons of football to get stuck into between now and then, and tons of football in the next week. 3 games in the next 6 days for Leeds United. A very busy spell before we head into an even busier spell, which will be Christmas and then the impending January transfer market that may see Leeds bring in some reinforcements. I am delighted to be joined by Joe Blackburn for tonight's preview. This is a pre-record, by the way, because we're both elsewhere doing other things right now live, but I want to make sure we got this out. And also a lovely announcement that Joe will be coming on board to the channel to give me a dig out in December while I head off on my honeymoon, and I'm delighted to have Joe to help me out with that. But we'll check in with Joe first things first. Joe, how are you, mate? How's things?
Pretty good. It's been a fairly chill day. I'm looking ahead to what is a fun little evening of work. I've got a nice little 4-hour shift in about an hour's time, and then I have a second shift that starts at 4:22 in the morning, which is going to be good fun. Yeah.
Oh, that's harsh. What are you covering at 4:20?
It's the qualifying for the Formula One, but it's in Las Vegas. But being Las Vegas, they couldn't just do it at normal America times. They had to say, you know what, we'll start this at midnight in our time. And it's like, you don't have to do that. It's just rude. It's just
yeah.
Well.
Interesting fact about the Las Vegas one. Jess goes over to Vegas every year for a trade show event that she sells Ireland for, and they've been setting it up the last 2 years. That she's been there. 1 year she was there, it was happening, but they've decided to leave the track down permanently, and the barriers up permanently in Vegas, which hasn't gone down well with those people who live there and use the strip on a regular basis because it's further to walk now before you can cross the street. But yeah, they've decided to leave the F1 track down permanently. So it's an interesting move for a street track.
What was also very, very fun about the street track, I watched, because I've been trying to shift my sleeping schedule to sort of suit the fact that it's going to be a nightmare this weekend, followed by a match at 3 o'clock on a Sunday, which is going to be fun to try and then wake up for. But it's because it's in the middle of a desert. They did the first practice session, and every single time they went past, there was just a plume of dust. And it's like, I feel like, because Las Vegas is already the stupidest city that was ever put together. It's in a place where people should not live. And I feel like putting really, really fast cars in a desert in 3-degree heat is probably not the one. But, you know, when you kind of just want to watch a little bit of chaos unfold.
Yeah.
That's this weekend.
It's a fun race. I hope there's no manhole covers getting launched around the place this time. But yeah, it's a fun race. But we've got a fun game of football, Joe, to come up against, to come into the weekend with. Leeds traveling to Swansea. Decent record against Swansea in recent years. But there's been a press conference today as well. Just want to get your thoughts on the press conference as a thing that exists, Joe, because it's quite an eventful place in the comments.
What people at the moment don't seem to see is that there is content and there is press designed things. Content is stuff that is just for the general audience. Content is what we are doing now. Content is stuff that Joe Wayman does, that I do, that everyone that you would consider a YouTuber does. Bigger organizations can't necessarily do that because that is risky to brands and stuff, so they need to release press-safe things, which is how you get a press conference, and they are strictly designed for the press, who will then further disseminate that information through content. But what seems to happen is people look at press conferences and go, don't know why I'm not being entertained right now. And that's not what it's for. It's to inform, and I feel like a lot of people are seeing it as like this is taking a long time. Yeah, because we're getting answers to questions, and sometimes that takes a while. If you don't fancy watching them, don't watch them. They're the most confusing comment sections on the internet, but well.
Yeah. If you come to watch a press conference and they're then put out by a manager giving long, lengthy answers, you've probably gone to the wrong video in the first place, because that's entirely what they're for and what they do. So what did you make of Farke's comments in the press conference, just as an overview of the press conference coming into this game? The extra day Leeds have, he's commented on a couple of times as well.
Yeah, as a general gist on having another day, it's really, really good for us, because last time we then played, I think that was the one where we played on a Friday, and Altanacra played at like 3 a.m. on a Wednesday morning or something.
Like that. Thursday for recovery.
Yeah. And we had something like 12 hours of having the players actually there and ready to prep for a match. That's bad. Not only for their like fitness and stuff, but in terms of like understanding how the other team's going to play. Whereas having a decent chunk of time, now we can take Saturday as what would essentially be a Friday and do stuff like match reviews and tactical shape and things like that, and not be in a nightmarish situation where we're like, okay, so Junior Firpo got back 16 hours ago, so if he's had a nap, then maybe like we're away from that because we're playing on Sunday, which is and it feels quite safe. And yeah, I don't like that it's compressed the week afterwards, but that's going to happen.
Yes, unnecessarily so. But then you get these runs of games where you go, we've got one game in 7 days, but we've got 3 and 6 then. Like, can you not mix that up a little bit more fairly? But I'm sure the FA Cup will have something to do with that as well in the cup games. Or the Premier League team's just dictating what everybody else should do. So more likely the case. We got some team news coming into the game as well, Joe, and some decent news for Leeds. One player that is definitely out is Isaac Schmidt, who had a bit of a hernia issue. Farke did talk before the international break saying that he had a bit of an injury and a bit of an illness, which had stopped the momentum. And then he said within the first week of the international break, he had an operation on his hernia to fix the hernia. It's keyhole surgery. It's a very routine procedure for footballers and sports people in general, sports hernias particularly. And he said recovery time is about 2 weeks. He's been out for a week with it already, so he'll miss this week probably and should be back hopefully for next week. And Junior Firpo will miss the game through suspension, the second game of his 3-match ban for the headbutt against Millwall. But good news on Largi Ramazani. He is back in training with the team. He's done some team training, not all of it, just bits of it, but will be on the bench and available as an option for Farke off the bench for the next 3 games. What were your thoughts on that?
It's good that we're giving Ramazani a little bit of time to get back into things, because a lot of people will basically demand that we get him back as soon as possible, because what we saw in the first few minutes against Watford, the last few minutes he played for Leeds, was incredible. It was really good stuff. It was direct, it was fast, and he knew how to get the ball in the direction of the goal, which is something that I think we tend to miss from time to time. But at the same time, we saw last season how rushing players back from issues can lead to pretty big problems. So, for example, we tried to get Strouk back as soon as possible because we knew that a surgery would end the season, and then it ended the season anyway because it didn't recover as we expected. We knew that Georgie was dealing with a hernia, so we were like, okay, surgery, you're back as soon as we can get you back, and then he wasn't the same again after that throughout the season. So I think taking our time with Ramazani, making sure, okay, you're definitely 100%, you can get 15 minutes against Swansea, half an hour against Luton, and then we'll see how we're doing in terms of form, and that will decide whether or not you start. Make sure that we don't have to deal with that problem again this season. It's like, I don't know whether we said this when recording something or just in a general chat or something, but it's a case of this entire season, I think, is going to be don't take risks on players, because we saw what happened last season at the end of the year because we'd taken risks earlier. We're going to see all of this pay out for us in the last month or 2 of the season because we're being more careful and we're not going to risk that burnout.
There's a bit more depth there as well, and Leeds have the luxury of maybe being able to sit back and give him another couple of weeks, because whether people like Manor Solomon's performances over the last couple of weeks or not, he came back from an injury. He was pushed back into the team probably sooner than he would needed to be, and wasn't great in that first game, but he definitely looked better in the second game when he came off the bench. So you've got him, you've got Dan James, who seems to be back to full fettle now as well, and doing well. So you've got him as well. You've got Willie Nonto, who's having a good season statistically, if nothing else, from a goals and assists perspective. He's Leeds' second best player. So you've got that. There's no need really to rush Ramazani back in. It would feel like a bit of a panic move at this stage if you were to throw him back into the starting lineup straight away. And also, being that it was labelled at the time of severe ankle ligament damage, he could be targeted very easily, and it's very easy to do that again. It's an ankle, so a slight tackle, 50-50 even, and all of a sudden he could be in serious trouble again. So giving him the time to strengthen that up properly and be ready to come back makes sense. But also just having him on the bench as an option for the last 10 or 15 minutes is great to have in case we need just a little bit of a spark off that bench as well. But again, the depth is there, Joe, this year. We've got it all across the park. Central midfield as well. We looked this week at the differences between Ethan Ampadu and Ilya Grua's partnership, Joe Rothwell and Autanaka's midfield partnership, which are pretty much dead level in terms of all key indicators. Yeah. And you have Joshua Gilavogi sitting in there as well. So plenty of depth in the areas, plenty of options there. Max Vober also available for the game now after playing 90 minutes against Austria. Some of Daniel Farke's comments always make me scratch my head, where he said he would rather he didn't play 90 minutes, but then he did say before the international break that he wasn't going to tell Ralph Rangnick what to do. So I think if he didn't want to play 90 minutes, maybe tell Ralph Rangnick not to play him in 90 minutes. You know, that might have made sense to say it before the fact and not complain about it after the fact. So
yeah, but I think it looked to me like a case sort of where we know that Vogel wasn't going to be 100%, so I think that was taken as I'm not going to tell Ralph Rangnick what to do, and then the rest is just a silent bit of sentence, because it's assumed, because he's been very, very injured for quite a while. Any sensible manager goes, maybe don't play him for this bit. So it feels like in this press conference, it's more of a, clearly you didn't hear me the first time, or at least you didn't think
Pick
beyond the words that I said. You didn't take one step further and go, maybe there's something being implied here. Maybe don't do that again. Sort of energy.
The decision as well to play him in the 90 minutes in the second international game and none in the first one, when you could have played him in the 90 minutes in the first one and rested him in the second one to give him that time to rest, come on back. So, and Farke did say there was a little bit of a reoccurrence of the knee problem that he had, which, by the way, he picked up on his last international game, which was the last match he played. So I think if Daniel Farke wants players to not play 90 minutes, I think he needs to be a little bit more direct in the instructions that he gives to teams, because if you go to the Premier League, you'll see that there'll be instructions that will go out. You saw 8 players pull out of the England squad. You saw Barcelona pull 2 players out of the Spanish squad. Happens, especially in these type of games. So, but good news all around, Joe, in terms of there's volume back, there's covering key areas. Obviously, 2 fullbacks missing, Schmidt and Ferbo's not ideal. Sam Byram likely will deputise at left back, Jayden Bogle at right back, and we should be okay for a week or so anyway, as long as Sam Byram doesn't pick up a knock, because there is no other cover now on that left hand side because they're both out.
Pascal Stroke. Jesse Marsh showed us that you can do that.
It was fine there. Yeah. Means you need to bring Vogel on the left hand side of the centre back. That maybe. Joe, couple of players to keep an eye out for Leeds. Liam Cullen seemed to find his goal scoring boots again for Wales in midweek, and he will be available for Swansea in this game. But in general, Leeds have had a pretty good crack against Swansea. In the 6 meetings that they've had since 2018, Leeds have won 4 of them, Swansea only winning 1, and a draw in the mix as well. But Leeds have a good record last year going there, and Dan James scoring and Joel Pirou both scoring, and both getting a bit of stick for being ex-Swansea players who celebrated against their old club. Expect more of the same from them, hopefully.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I feel the thing with Dan James is you can tell when he's got that little bit of fire in him. You can tell when he's got that little bit more aggression in his head, and he's like, no, you know what? I'm going to really piss someone off with this one. So looking back to the Leicester match last season, the one where we won 3-1 rather than the 1-0, there was a point towards the end where it's like clearly we're trying to play the game out because we're in the lead now, and he just deliberately pisses off Ricardo Pereira a bit. And it's like, well, you had a little bit of nettle in that one, didn't you? And it feels like that's sort of what happened with this one last year when he celebrated the goal. I feel like he and Joel Pirou are going to sort of have a little bit of a connection, being like, bit grim down in Swansea, innit? Shall we make it worse for them? Go on then. And it feels like that sort of match where they're going to be very up for it, and they're 2 players that you really want to be up for it and feel in the match.
The head-to-head record, or sort of head-to-head form on this coming into it's going to be very interesting as well. If you look at it from a key form perspective, Swansea being the home team actually have a slightly worse record at home than they have away from home, but they're 11th overall on the table. They're 13th in the home league table. They've only won 3 games at home out of 7 that they've played, only losing 1 but drawing 3. Leeds, if they're to improve their position in the league table and get into those automatic spots, it's very clear the area Leeds will need to improve on, and that's Leeds away form. Leeds are 7th in the away table so far this season, only winning 2 of the 7 away games that we played. 4 draws in there as well and losing only 1. So a small case of Joe just turning those draws into wins, but you want to see a slightly more aggressive performance from Leeds United in this game. Swansea are a team that like to play football at home, have high possession in their games at home. So you could see a bit more of an open game for Leeds in this one.
Something, I decided to look up their possession stats just now, and there's something very, very interesting in one of the trends. So in late September, they played Norwich and they played Coventry. They had 46% possession and then 56% possession, and they won both of those matches. So they're hovering around 50-50 kind of matches. Since then, and this is up until the start of November, so they've had 3 matches that aren't part of this little data set that I'm going to run through. They've had 65%, 65%, 63, 66, 61, and 70. And they didn't win a single one of those matches, and they scored 1 goal. They are a side where, as much as I like us having the ball and doing that being nice and secure thing, and the whole, we'll just hold it because we don't need to do anything risky or aggressive. I think we can look back. Yeah, I think we can look back to last year and look at how we played very transitional stuff, and that was really effective for us, and say, well, when they have the ball, clearly there's something wrong with their defensive structure when they're waiting for the other team to do something. That I don't know whether they're really, really poor at defending counters, whether they're really bad at getting back in time, which says to me, get Dan James on, and that is going to be wonderful for us, especially if he's in that mood that we discussed. And I think it's going to be a case of, I don't mind if they have a good amount of the ball, because it's pretty evident that when they have the ball, they're not necessarily getting all the results that they think.
And might play into Leeds' hands a little bit, because when there has been a bit more space in games and when teams have tried to go toe-to-toe with Leeds, it has played into Leeds' hands, where we've seen the faster, more attacking performances from Leeds. When teams have sat in and let Leeds have the ball, we've seen that more passive, pedestrian kind of football from Leeds. So you'd imagine, Joe, if they decide to continue with that, it could be a very good day at the office for Leeds.
It could be. I would say that it probably should be, but it's going to be decided a little bit by what that starting lineup looks like. Weirdly, it's one where I would say if he wasn't just coming off an injury, it'd be really nice to see Ramazani in this one, because we know he's got that pace, we know he gets forward, we know that he's quite good on the counter, and he's very, very aggressive and heads towards the goal. He's not available, which means that it's likely to be probably Solomon, I'd say, on that flank, and then maybe Nonto on the right, but I'd quite like a Dan James in there because of the reasons that we've mentioned and the pace. I feel like if we get into a situation where we clog ourselves up in that final third, we could potentially have issues. But I feel like, as much as we are having this conversation, we don't have any formal education in the world of football. I have always been very, very clear.
I've a little bit of a formal education.
Well, yeah, you do. I don't. I'm an idiot. But I've always been sort of from the perspective of, they know more than me. If I'm seeing these things, they're probably seeing these things as well. So I'm just going to trust that these conversations are going to be happening at the same time.
Yeah, the front pairing is going to be an interesting one for this. I think we've talked about this before as well, but Leeds have a front two of Joao Pirro or Mateo Joseph, and it depends. Personally, my thoughts are it depends on the game for who you should start, because I think they both offer very different things. You could play Joao Pirro in this game because he scored against them last year. It's his former club. There's always a bit of stakes there. Players always like to play against their former clubs. They don't always play particularly well against their former clubs, but they like to play against their former clubs. But given it's a game that could be slightly more open, it might play into Mateo Joseph's hands a little bit more, and he's come off the back of a very important goal for the Spanish under-21s in midweek as well, the winner in their game. So where would you go with these two? Do you continue with the starting Joseph, bringing Pirro off the bench for impact, or would you swap it around considering the opposition we're playing against?
I like the Pirro off the bench for impact because you've had the chance to exhaust a defence. But my worry with that is you get the clinical finishing of Joel Pirro if he starts. And then all he needs is a chance or two. And then brilliant, you've scored a goal. Wonderful. Whereas if you go a goal behind and you've started with Mateo Joseph, then it becomes, now they can sit in and just wait. But it's one of those situations in which I would lean Pirro, because I did a quick video on my channel earlier today. In which I sort of said, what exactly is the problem with Mateo? Because he scores lots for Spain, but it's not happened for us. And it's a mix of sort of the way that teams defend against us compared to how they defend against Spain, the way that under-21s players are always looking to impress a little bit more. So you're not going to get a Denmark under-21 side that is incredibly defensive and sitting back because they want to call up. They're not going to be incredibly bland and playing Dyche ball. So yeah, I'd lean Pirro just because we know that he needs a chance or two to finish, and we don't know what Swansea are going to look like defensively. Do
you think he makes any changes in the middle of the park? He's been obviously Gilavogi's looked quite good since he's come in. He's had another couple of weeks to work with Farke on his own. Tanaka's again had lots of minutes and lots of travel. Although it feels to me like if he was going to rest somebody, it would be more likely Rothwell, because he's the loanee and you would rather have the permanent players that are there in the side. Would you make any changes to that midfield partnership, or would you leave it as it is if you were Daniel Farke?
I think if you're Daniel Farke in this situation, you look at the three matches that are coming up, which are Swansea, then Luton, then Blackburn. And then you've got Swansea, who like to have a lot of the ball, which means that a lot of that match is going to be fought in the midfield. Yeah. I don't think you want to destructure that. I think if you want to change things, you wait until after the Swansea match and then you go, cool, Tanaka on the tired side, whacking Gilavogi instead. I think this is the match where it's going to matter a little bit more in midfield, and you're going to want that certainty. You don't want to sort of mess with the structure and lead to a bit of uncertainty if you don't need to, especially when we're taking that risk-free approach as much as we can.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game anyway. We will have the warm-up out tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. as well. So it's slightly, should probably go out on Sunday, but we're putting it out on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. So you'll get the stats pack for what will be the game. I'll give you all the detail on every single key metric that you need to keep an eye on for that game, and that'll be our first thing in the morning. Joe, from a score prediction-wise, where do you think this game's going to go?
Ooh, I'll go a nice boring 2-0. I'll have one each for Piru and James, just to rub it in. Just to rub it in.
What your comments, like what score you think is going to be, and also what you think the team lineup's going to be as well, because I think there's a couple of interesting questions. Joe, you want to say something there? I cut you off. Sorry.
Oh, is it just to rub it into him? Just because it'd be funny?
I'd like Joe Rodon to get his first goal against Swansea. That'd be nice. That's
Ooh,
yes.
I hadn't considered that one. 3-0. We're going 3-0.
3-0 then without Joe Rodon getting the first goal for Leeds. So that'd be nice as well. Personally, I think I agree with you. 2-0. I think Tanaka gets on the score sheet if he starts this one, and I would like to see. I would start with Joseph in this game because of the space. I think it might suit him a little bit more, and I would back him to score as well. So they're my two. But as I said, let me know down below what you think the score is going to be, or any change you think will happen to the lineup. And as I said, back in the morning for the warm up. Joe, anything going on your channel that you want to plug before we wrap up?
Continue on with Balls Knowledge. I'm halfway through recording this week's quiz, and at some point I'll edit that. Maybe in the 6-hour gap that I've got between work bits, I'll work it out. Aside from that, I'm just doing the Football Manager streams are back. A few videos. I'm going to try and get a little bit more into doing things more often because work is calming down that little bit. Regular things is the best way I can put it, I think.
Good. Well, Joe's details are down below in the description as well. If you want to go and check Joe's channel out and give him a subscription, and you will get used to seeing Joe a little bit more in the next coming weeks as well. He'll be floating around before he takes over for the news for a couple of days for me while I'm off. Hopefully sunning myself and not traveling to a tornado. But we'll wait and see what happens there. Folks, massive thank you as always for supporting the channel and for watching, and I will see you in the morning for the warm-up.